Welcome to episode number 5. This is the Beza podcast. I'm your host, Jasmine, and today I have a successful Cuban entrepreneur, but also the most humble friend that I have. Welcome, Ariel Quintela.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you are taking the time to just dedicate a few minutes to talk about what really you are and what you bring to the Cuban community. And I am very grateful that you're my friend and that you're taking the time to be here today with me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. I know that you were born in Cuba, right? And you came here when you were little, like 4 years old, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Do you think your Cuban heritage formed the man that you're today?
I definitely do think so. I mean, you're brought up in a Cuban household. Your traditions are Cuban. I think the way you think, you're born with thinking Cuban in many respects. And so I think all that, and then the respect that I have for Cuba, the respect I have for our history, the respect that I have for our struggles.
Yeah.
I think it makes us who we are.
Yeah, that is so true. And I can relate to that because I'm also Cuban, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did your family ever, share with you if they'd ever faced any challenges coming to a new country?
No, of course, everyone, faces new challenges, but my parents have always been positive, and they've always been people who look forward. They don't look back. And so I wasn't brought up thinking about anything negative or hearing negative stories of Cuba or of my, of what's going on in Cuba and so forth. It was always echa pa'lante.
Yeah.
And my parents are always very, very good in making sure that we were goal-oriented and that we kept a positive attitude.
Yeah.
And so I think that combined with our Hispanic heritage is what helped me.
I think one of the most beautiful things that we all Cubans have in common is that we're so positive, right? We come from such, hard life, living every day, and we're still positive, overcoming all the challenges over there. And then when we come to this country, we want a better future, but it's, we don't give up.
No.
We don't give up. But that's, I think, one of the things that we all have in common.
Mm-hmm. And some of the, I'm happiest. I mean, I feel so happy when I go to Cuba. And when I get off that plane, and even though I've been here since I was 4 years old, that to me is something very special.
Yeah, I think, seeing it from my point of view, that's very special because you came when you were so little, so you probably barely have any memories, right? At 4, you probably don't remember anything. And I think it's hard to find people like that even though they didn't spend a lot of time there, you still have a passion and the commitment to, share what our culture is about with others. And I think that's very special. So I thank you for that.
No. And I think people forget because for years, Cuba was a mystery. Cuba, nobody would hear about what was going on in Cuba. And I always had that love. And I remember the first time I went to Cuba with my mother, and I remember flying into Cuba, writing all my feelings. You get sentimental because you see things that you've always wanted to experience, and next thing you know.
And I can relate to that too because I remember the first time that I went to Cuba, and for me, it's a weird feeling because I tell my husband that it's hard because I don't feel I grew up there, but I came already when I was 18. And I don't feel like I'm completely from there, and I don't feel like I'm completely from here.
Yes.
So you feel like a loss of identity somehow. But the first time I went there, I remember I went to visit the school that I went to when I was little. And my greatest memories were created there. And I went to school with those people all the way to high school. So I remember being there and like I couldn't stop crying because I have all this emotion inside of me I couldn't express.
Yes.
And I'm like, am I stupid or what?
We are so emotional.
But yeah, it was.
I made you cry.
I know. But this is a good cry though. This is a really good cry because it means that we're passionate, we're passionate about everything we do in life, where we come from, and
Yes.
I think it's pretty amazing to feel that way.
I think so.
So let's talk a bit about, you shared with me, we were talking not too long ago about your first job here. And you worked, I think your first job was at the post office.
Well, I had many jobs prior because my father was a self-made, he was a businessman and he always had different businesses. And in New Jersey, he had hardware stores. So I worked very young with my father. And then when we moved to Tampa, my father opened up a grocery store called La Victoria.
Where at?
On Armenia, 4144 North Armenia. And so for many years, I was the butcher. I worked at the grocery store. And I remember one day my father telling me, this is going to be yours someday. And I said, no, gracias. No, because it was like 7 days a week. And my parents are always such hard workers. And they've always been such role models. And they're just, even to this day, I mean, my father passed 2 years ago, come June. But toward the last year, he would say, we need to work. And I would say, people, we've already worked today.
Yeah. Well, that is so awesome that you're sharing that. So you come from an entrepreneur family.
Well, my father, all his life, did that. In Cuba, he had businesses with construction materials. My uncle had a grocery store called La Victoria. So yes, I grew up watching my father struggle in his own businesses.
Who do you think is the biggest influence in your life?
I would assume my parents. No, and then not only that, but you grow up with friends for life that are still my friends for to this day. And I think you have influences from many factors. But of course, you have that symbolic, home life, which I think gives you your main structure.
To me also, my parents are the biggest influence in my life, and I owed everything I am.
Of course.
To them.
Of course.
Yeah. Talking back about your job at the airport, how was that experience?
I think they were all positive experiences. I remember when I told my father that I was quitting that job after 6 years to open up my own business.
Oh, yeah?
And he was like, are you sure? Because people get to work there and that's kind of a lifelong. And I said, nope, I'm ready to open up my own business. And I was 24 years old. And I did. And I've never worked for anyone since.
So you finished that job and you went directly to what you did today?
Correct. I remember when I went to quit, they told me at the post office, they said, why don't you take a year leave of absence? We'll offer you that. And that's, that was rare, but they were such good people. And I said, nope, I've made my decision and I'm going to start on my own.
So you knew what you wanted right then?
I knew that I wanted to work for myself. Okay. And so I spent years struggling and learning and making mistakes and pushing forward. But the key is I've been, at the helm of my own life ever since then. Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us a bit about what your business is about?
Well, right now, my concentration has been with a series of partners in Ybor City. The restoration of that grand city. And, I'm a small part of it, but I've taken the part of making sure that our history is preserved. And from day one, that was my goal is, yes, anyone could build a building, anyone can create product, but the key is you have to unite that product with history. And where better for our Cuban history than Ybor City? Yeah. And so, throughout the years, cities grow, cities have urban sprawl, but I think that the missing link is linking, the past with the future. And the beautiful history, just like our history in Cuba, our 500-year history is beautiful with all our struggles and all our changes. But yet what happened in Ybor City was a miracle and was magical. And if you don't retell that story, it'll be forgotten. And so how do you best tell it is by naming buildings after these heroes that helped Marti. In his visits, in 21 visits to Ybor City from 1891 to 1895, and just kind of allowing the next generations to see, to read, to understand what actually transpired in those years that freed Cuba from Spain, and at the time made Ybor City the fastest growing city in the nation in its day.
And it's probably going to be the fastest growing city also here soon, right?
I think it's beautiful what's happening there. I think that that with the vision of Darrell Shaw and everything that's happening in that area, not only us, but so many other people, so many other players, so many other vital key people there is going to make that city something spectacular.
I think it's so beautiful that you guys are doing that to preserve the history and connect the past with the future. It's really amazing. And so you're talking so passionate about Cuba and the history of Cuba. And my question seated here is, how did you learn all this? You came at such a young age. What made you inspired to learn and to just, be so passionate about it?
I mean, I think we're all passionate about our history and our past and so forth, and then being involved in Ybor City and being involved in the construction and then you grow through osmosis by hearing. And there's so many wonderful people in Ybor City. E.J. Salcinas, that's not only a wonderful human being, but a terrific historian,
an amazing speaker,
and just human being. And you have Gabriel Cataya, and I could keep naming people, but these historians, these people have helped me considerably, because as I started the quest of wanting to name buildings, they helped me.
Yeah.
They're the ones that said, okay, and they've done so much research. So I knew, but you learn as you get more and more involved. And so I think it takes a team effort to create what we're doing. And I can't tell you that I've done it on my own, but the desire has been to make sure that every building has a story.
Yeah. Well, there's a Cuban dicho saying that says, "En la unión está la fuerza," and exactly that's what you guys are showing here.
Yes.
And I thank you for that, because I think it's beautiful, and it's only that for me, I had forgotten about my history because I was there, I grew up there, and going through the hard times that you go in Cuba, you forget about the future, the past, and it's just a struggle to live in the present, right? And you forget about all these things, and coming here, meeting you, being involved in all these things that are going on in Ybor City right now, it just brings me back to my roots and the things that I would love my daughter to learn. So we're very grateful that our company is blogging about all these amazing things that are going on in Ybor City. And this takes me to Proyecto Casa Marti.
Yes.
This is very, very special to you and to all the Cuban community, because Marti is, I think, it's a hero, it's a global hero that has been forgotten. And you guys bring him alive and dedicating part of this building to revive his history and who he was. It's pretty amazing. Can you talk to us a little bit about this project?
Sure. It just so happens I'm reading a book that Ariel Quintela wrote, The Last 20 Sundays of José Martí. Naming this prominent building Casa Marti is just giving a man that deserves so much, the honor of having a building named after him, especially the building that's the grand building as you enter the gates of Ybor City. And so it's a building that that requires, respect for the man. And like every building we do, we make the lobbies, we make the entrances almost like small museums. And this one here, we have 2 statues of Martí. We have all the information of his 21 visits to Ybor City. We have copies of papers that he wrote that we're going to have on the wall, an array of different Cuban artists, paintings, and it's basically just a homage to Martí that is important for us to have. And across the street, El Liceo Cubano, and that was the building that Ybor gave to the Cuban workers, the Cuban cigar workers. And that's where the whole revolution started, because there was a club there called Club Agramonte. And the newspaper man named Carbonell invited Martí to speak in Tampa. And that's where that whole love affair started between Martí and the cigar workers. And it all started there in Ybor City, in that little corner.
Yeah.
And so I think that Casa Marti is something that's going to open up within the next 60 days. And it's 128 units. It has commercial units on the first floor. But yet it's going to be a special building with all the lobbies, and there's going to be a section for him for what he wrote in his newspapers and Los Besos that he wrote. And every front door of every door is going to have one of his verses. So as you get to the front door, you're going to always be able to read something that Martí wrote. So I think it's just working with passion to make the building something very special.
That is so beautiful. And I also know that it's not only about José Martí, but Juan Gualberto Gomez.
The building next door is Juan Gualberto Gomez. And then, he was his closest ally in Cuba. So we're naming a building after Juan Gualberto Gomez. And that's another special, beautiful building that we're doing in the honor of him. And so when you enter that lobby, we're going to have his life story, because Juan Gualberto Gomez was a slave, was born a slave. His parents bought him out of slavery, and that man got to be a newspaper owner, an attorney, and he was the closest confidant that José Martí had in Cuba, and he's the one who received the cigar that had the order for the war. And so, the history is so rich, so that you have to honor these heroes. And for us in Ybor City, what better way is there than naming buildings?
And I love how that building is also close to the Cuban club, to all these, buildings that made history, and you guys are keeping it alive. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you. No, that's the oldest part of Ybor City. The building on the other corner, we named it Fernando Socarrás, which was another close ally of Martí. Behind it is Casa Pedroso. Just to kind of summarize a little about the park, since we're on that conversation. Yeah. I mean, that was where Paulina Pedroso lived. And she was an Afro-Cuban that was a huge advocate of José Martí. She met him over in Key West. And she moved to Tampa with her husband, Ruperto. And he would walk down the streets with her. And she was always a boisterous gal, and a lady that was always very much in José Martí's side and for the revolution. And they tried to assassinate him on one of his visits, and she took him in that night, and he would stay with her, but she took care of him. He stayed with her for a few days until he got better, and her husband would stand guard outside, protecting. So, and that's why the building next door is called Casa Paulina Pedroso, because of giving her honor for being one of his closest allies here in Tampa.
Yeah.
And so her building is right next, overlooking the park. And so I think that corner is the closest allies. And the building right there on 7th, we're naming it Carbonell, after the gentleman who invited José Martí to come to Tampa.
Now, is that a new development?
What, the Carbonell? No, it's the existing building that's there, the old Walt Jancy building, but we're naming it simply to give buildings that is in our portfolio the names of the prominent names that we're looking at. Yes.
Yeah. Now, going back to that, I think is just amazing how most Cubans don't know, we were not taught in school that the Cuban Revolution actually started here in Ybor City. So.
No, it's incredible. And, you think there's 1 million Cubans in Miami, and I would love for them to all come and visit Tampa for the historical purposes.
Yeah.
I think Ybor City, the growth of Ybor City is going to be absolutely incredible. And what's already planned and what's already known to the public, it's just complete beautiful growth that's thought through. And what we're trying to attract is the right balance with culture, with history, with the right construction, with not overbuilding, but yet making a blend to create a city that, with parks, with dog parks, with walking paths, with everything that a city's going to need, just like they had back in the early 1900s, recreating that in the heart of Tampa in Ybor City.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do you think all this, all these buildings with the Cuban history, they're going to make a big impact in the community?
I think they already have. I mean, we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? I think that you walk in, it's not only naming the buildings. We have plaques. You can walk up and down 7th Avenue, and you have plaques of the history.
Yeah.
In the Hotel Haya, you have all their history up and down 7th Avenue. And I think it's the more the city grows, the more history will become more and more prominent. And so I see that happening, and I think it's going to be fun watching it grow.
So we have laughed, we have cried in this podcast. But Ariel, I am so happy that you have taken the time to share all this amazing history with me and everything that's going on in Ybor City. I want you to know that as a Cuban, it means a lot. And I will forever be grateful for all the history that you're bringing back. And I think it's going to be amazing. It's going to make a difference in all the Latino community here in Tampa. So I thank you. And I hope that we can have many more podcasts because there's so much to discuss. Thank you again for being part of the Beza podcast. Remember to follow and share our videos so we can grow this amazing community. And as you can see, we are sharing history, we're sharing passion. So we're very passionate about what we do. So make sure you like and share with others. Thank you. See you next time.